Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thanks to all of you who are joining in for this session as well. And good afternoon, good morning, sorry. Um, Who Feeds Bangalore is an exploration into different forces that shape how the city of Bangalore eats. It's a participatory research project fueled by strong doses of curiosity, collective community thinking, and doing to get a clearer idea of the people who feed Bangalore. At Phytopia, we have been diving into exploring the relationships that Bangalore City has with plants through this 2-day workshop and conversations and a little bit of cooking, which is tomorrow. This session is in collaboration with Bangalore Sustainability Forum, which is an interinstitutional collaborative initiative that aims to address issues relating to long-term sustainability of urban and peri-urban landscapes. Um, right now, we're getting into the second of 5 talks and conversations today in day 1. And we are going to be speaking with Nameet and Zareen. The conversation is the Olericulture that shaped Bangalore's restaurant culture. Nameet is the founder and chief production officer at chief production head at First Agro. He is an expert, subject matter expert in olericulture, which is the science of growing plants. And Zareen is the founder and owner of restaurants Daddy's Deli and Red Fork. Her restaurants have been one of the early adopters of First Agro produce, and so she is going to share insights about that. Some general housekeeping before we get into the main session. Request you all to please keep your mic and video turned off. You can ask questions in the chat box of Zoom, as well as of the YouTube live that's streaming. And towards the end of the session, I will take your questions and pose them to our speakers. So thanks, Nameet and Zareen, for joining us this morning. And over to you.
Thank you, Shivani. Thank you, Bangalore Sustainability Forum, and thank you, Phytopia, for this opportunity. And above all, thanks everybody this morning, and it's beautiful sunny morning on the farms. I wanted to keep this talk very simple, easy to understand, not too very complex. I didn't want to use too many big botanical or scientific things. But first, I'm a farmer, and I'm very proud about the fact that I am one of those people who have been given the power to grow food that nourishes. And I'm also very thankful to the earlier speaker, Mr. Prabhakar, for setting such a wonderful tone to all this talk, right? Because it is the stewardship of maintaining the seeds that gives us the power and also the big responsibility of feeding everybody. So the farmer, I think so that responsibility is very big, and I'm very proud. I'm also nervous at times of such big responsibilities, but yes, seeds are going missing. Cultivars are disappearing very rapidly. It's been something I've been on for 10 years on this journey. Very tiring journey. Sometimes I feel it's a very thankless job, but I enjoy. I go back to the farm. I see beautiful vegetables growing without the use of any agrochemicals of any sort. Makes me feel more and more confident. But also in today's talk, I will also talk of something that Dr. Prabhakar Rao did touch upon, is what happens after you grow vegetable as a farmer. What happens in a journey when you have a produce and it cannot hit the market. So I'll be touching a little bit about it. As Shivani said, housekeeping rules are great. If somebody has a message to put it aside, and she will ping it out. And we'll start keeping it simple. It all started way back in 2007 or 8. As to fly long, short, medium, crazy hops all over Canada, seeing nothing but ice, white, and then the spring came in, and you would see it all transform to beautiful green with very large greenhouses. And I always kept wondering what grew inside, and who are these people who are growing it. And one of those days, I had a day off. I got down and I said, okay, let me take a drive and figure this out. And for the first time in my life, I actually saw tomatoes which were not red in color. And I didn't believe it. I thought maybe this was plastic, or maybe this was genetically modified, or the stupid thought does come across your mind, right? That, hey, maybe they put some color into it. And then I realized the whole beautiful world of vegetables and how tasty they were and how clean they were grown and there were no pesticide residues. It made a very big impact on me. And you would go back to the supermarket, try and find them, and you would never get them. And you kept wondering, where does this all produce go to, right? And then I did speak to my brother who was then in California and who also shared the same views. Naveen, who's also the co-founder at First Agro. Uh, he said, if we can't get it, let's do it ourselves. Right? If you can't find a solution, go and invent the solution for yourself. And let's take a long shot in the dark and let's see what we can do. I said, it's great talking all this sitting in Vancouver and California. But what about my own country, your own country, India, right? Let's do something interesting there. And we came back and I started on this journey trying to identify seeds. I didn't know anything about growing them. I'm not an agriculture graduate or a horticulture graduate. I'm a pilot. I fly airplanes. And I teach people how to fly airplanes and not kill themselves. I said, what is the skill, right? The number one skill, accepting failure and trying to do it again and again and better than the previous one, right? It's like teaching a cadet how to land an airplane and not kill himself and break the plane. That was a long journey, 2010, 2011, 2012, kept failing. But then, you find small little lessons. Long story short, it's been little over 10 years I've been doing this. Something that I wanted to build upon my previous speaker's legacy of talk is a very concept of innovation. Everybody thinks innovation is on your cell phone, on your computer, the next drone, the next AI app, the next killer app, right? Innovation can happen even on a vegetable. It's not only merely reviving or rescuing something or getting it acclimatized. It's how do you bring it back to the chefs? Now, the question that haunted me before meeting Zareen and Xerxes and the lovely family here on the farms, including Sneha, was, is the onus of innovation on the farmer, or is the onus of innovation on the chef? Who starts innovating? Does the chef go back and find a farmer saying that I want, and Zareen, if you remember the question, can I get good rocket? And the first thing I looked at Zareen and I asked her the question on a little farm, the stone table, if you remember, the lunch table. I said, do you want Italian rocket or do you want wild rocket? And she said, Italian rocket, sharp as it could get, clean as it would be, and tasty. I said, give me 2 minutes. I walked through the greenhouse, I got her back and she said, that's it. We got it. And Xerxes looked and said, I already know a dish. I still fail to answer this question within myself, but I think so the growing revelation is it would be more a joint effort. If the artist can't get good paint, good canvas, good brush, what's the point of a Monet on the wall? And if I can't give him that elements that he requires, he can't paint anything. What am I going to do by bringing such good quality paint when there is no artist? So I am not the painter. I am the paint supplier. I've always told this. I supply the paint. I am not the painter. The chef is my painter. He is my patron. He's a patron saint, so to say. Right? It's a very important journey to grow. Should I grow first and then find a chef, or should I wait for a chef to come here and say I want this? Because Shivani, Elsbeth being a customer as well, right? Who's going to pay the bills? I'm not an NGO. I have to work for money. I have to feed people on the farm. I have to feed my doggies. I have to pay the power bill. Right? I have to pay for a diesel or the vehicle that takes it to the restaurant. I have to package it so Zareen gets a 95% yield. Right? And she doesn't end up throwing 30% of the produce that comes in. I have to sort it. I have to grade it. I have to sterilize it. I have to clean it. I have to put it in a gel box, a thermocol box with gel packs. Who's going to pay for all that, right? So it is a for-profit initiative, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm a farmer. I need to pay bills. All this needs to be thought through with the cost and not keeping it explosively expensive. We don't need to do that. Third thing, which is very important from the legacy of my previous speaker, right, is adoption. Innovation needs patronage, innovation needs adoption. There is no point in growing 200 grams of rocket for daddy's jelly. There is no point in growing 6 black tomatoes for red folk. We need the chef to go and get this adopted. And God's been very kind to us, right? That today we work with 97 five-star and luxury properties across the country. As of the day, yes, many are on a back foot. Orders have dwindled down to absolutely nothing. But that's something I'm going to end with this talk, is the next journey of the farmer. But having said that, coming back to the theme of innovation, patronage, adoption, we have been very, very lucky. And I'm very proud of Bangalore in many ways. People are very experimentative with food. People go ahead and say, it's okay, I will make a salad out of pea tomatoes. I will use a tatsoi instead of a bok choy. I will use a red frill mustard in my salad, and I will risk putting a bocconcini cheese on it. And all these instances are with my co-host Zareen. These are all from her menu. Nothing is out of somebody's random thoughts. These are exactly what came out of Red Folk and Daddy's Jelly, and I have wonderful memories also eating there and enjoying what it's, and actually getting a glimpse of what the chef is thinking. Summarizing the first component of this talk is, as First Agro, we were immensely proud of picking the best seed out there, getting it acclimatized to the weather conditions at Talakadu. Talakadu is a beautiful place, 150 kilometers from Bangalore. Very beautiful weather, great soil, untouched for the last 30, 40 years. Probably nobody has tilled it before we tilled it. High minerality of the soil. I have absolutely nothing around 2 kilometers of me to pollute me. My groundwater tables are brilliant. I'm 1 kilometer away from Kaveri, and we call it our Kaveri Valley. It's a little tongue-in-cheek and a dig at Napa Valley, but we said if we can't have Napa Valley, might as well have our own Kaveri Valley, right? So that is the first component, which I call the stewardship of innovation. It does not necessarily rest upon the farmer alone. I think so it's jointly held between the chef and the farmer. And at this point, I will stop for a bit and I'll let Zareen have her views if the moderator would permit this. Hello? Zareen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I would want your views, Zareen. What did you think?
All right. I think first, let me just lay the cards on the table and say that a lot of the work that Red Fork did with you, Nameet, was thanks to my son Xerxes. I mean, he was the one that came from Australia, with these big ideas, having studied there, worked in these nice restaurants and waiting to do something in India, and then facing this total frustration about not even finding enough varieties of lettuce to work with. And he was like, what is this? And I said, I did warn you, you wanted to come back. And I said, this is what India is. We have very little to work with when you compare it to the produce of Australia. But then suddenly he comes one day and he says, guess what? And he brings a packet. I don't know where he picked it up from, maybe one of these farmer markets. And he said, look, this company called First Agro is doing these things, and maybe, we should work with them. And I think that's this whole idea that he had discovered First Agro and finally his creativity could be unleashed. I will never forget that joy in his face, Nameet, with that first packet of, I don't even know, maybe it was rocket or maybe it was some mustard. What did he say? He says Japanese mustard, he said. So I think it is really due to Xerxes. I have a lot of points. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here, but he's told me a whole lot of things. I think what we loved was that your ingredients were different from everybody else, and it allowed us to use it in so many ways. And you made your story come alive, Nameet. You took us to your farm and you showed us the number of tomatoes that you grew there. For us, having seen that, being able to pick these little, I remember tiny grape, smaller than grape, those tomatoes, we could just pick them off the vine and eat them. And then you have those huge ones, San Marzano.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the variety that we could, and each of those could be used for different things in our restaurant. So the flavor, the pulp, I think the San Marzano, if I'm not mistaken, we used in the Parsi dish Sali Boti, where we needed a great tomato base. So the pulp we used for that. We could use the different colored ones in our salads. So it allowed us to be creative. And I think for a chef, that is what he needs, to let his creativity be unleashed and to give him the tools to be able to do that. And that is why we will forever be indebted to you. I think everybody used to talk about the kind of salads that they could get at Red Fork, and a lot of the ingredients were due to what we could get out of First Agro.
So Zareen, this brings me to my question, right? So who leads innovation, right? This talk has to have takeaways for all the 52 participants. Who leads innovation? Does the farmer lead the innovation? Does the chef lead the innovation? Or is it something that we do together? What was our experience? What was your experience to begin with?
So I really think it's a team effort, Nameet. It's very, very difficult. It's like a chicken and egg situation. I mean, because this was a reality. I know that Xerxes was extremely frustrated when he just didn't get the kind of things he would have liked to create dishes with. And believe me, it was, and our requirements were small, Nameet. So I do remember, when you came up with this minimum quantity, how Xerxes used to curse you. I will not forget. I hope he will be listening to this YouTube later on, because he used to say, how? So we weren't able to order in bulk, and our whole philosophy of running the restaurant was very, very different from most other restaurants. We were a family run restaurant. We were into fresh, it's not as if I wanted to store your stuff for days on end and pull it out of a freezer. That wasn't Red Fork. So our philosophy was fresh food. Absolutely. If something finished, it finished. We didn't get into freezing stuff. So it was, I think it was just the timing was perfect. You were looking for chefs like Xerxes, and Xerxes was looking for growers like you. I don't think it's easy to say who. It just got to be timing, and it has to sync together.
So it's more like divine matchmaking, right, Zareen?
It
Right?
is.
And the art needs a patron, and the patron needs the art, right?
I agree.
But at the end of the day, right, I personally feel, and I know Elizabeth is also part of this, and she's listening very attentively.
Yeah, she was a big part of it. Yes.
Yeah, she was part of the team, right? That day when you decided that you would not use the local tomatoes anymore and San Marzano would be used to make the saliboti, she did call me on the side and she said, "Are you sure that the flavor is going to be right for Indian?" And I said, "Look, I trust San Marzano. It's a choice that I would make if I would make a nice tomato base, right?" And she said, "All right, I have deep faith in Zareen's observation, and I'm going to take your word, and I'm just going to do it. In case anything does screw up, you ought to be blamed. I'll take the entire responsibility of it. I will replace your San Marzanos with more."
I shall admit that I also had reservations, Nameet, now that we are many years away from that, because, Parsi cuisine, I had started this, when we closed, I had already run the restaurant for 17 years. And I had customers who had come to me on day one of opening the restaurant, was still coming to me when we changed from the local Indian tomato to your San Marzano. And I was extremely concerned that they should not have to face this change in taste, because they were coming back for the same taste. I mean, that's one of the ground rules of a restaurant, right? Consistency. But it worked. It worked. I think we tweaked the quantity. Maybe we tweaked. I don't know what I don't recall, but it did work.
Yeah, and I remember a rather interesting celebrity chef who's also common friends between us walked in, ordered saliboti, and he said, somehow I feel there is some involvement of you here. And then I said, what are you blaming me for? What is my accusation? He said, this is what I call a definitive turning point in culinary culture, right? Is the ability to mishmash ingredients and yet keep the consistency and raising the bar.
Yeah.
I remember many, many years ago, Xerxes came back to me and said that, do you have rocket flowers? The little yellow flowers that you would get?
Yes.
And I said, look, we throw it. If you're not making seeds, we chuck it. You might as well use it. And then I dumped in a lot of flowers, and Sneha came back and said that there are so many flowers. What do I do with it? I said, enjoy it. Have fun. Right? So it is a lot to do with the need to raise the bar more than the urgency or just it. Okay, how do I put it? There's no need to be, nothing needs to be thrust upon anybody.
Yeah.
But there needs to be a definitive need to innovate beyond the obvious. I still remember a wonderful quote from one of my mentor chefs who said, if the ingredients are good, the chef need not do much. And if the ingredients are crappy, the chef can't do much. Right? And it always made a very deep impression to me into the second part of this talk that I will go in the next 2 or 3 minutes. Is what happens to ingredients, right? As somebody in the question said that, where do I get this in the modern retail? Where do I get this online? I wanted to just close that loop, and I can't be more as eloquent as Dr. Rao was, but the trouble is supply chain and limited knowledge. Let me pull you back. How many people would actually know that a San Marzano works fantastically well on a pizza base as much as on a saliboti? Not many chefs I know that would actually, say that, yeah, it works. The simple reason is pulp. Now, let me take this same tomato to a modern retail chef. The first question is, why does this tomato look so funny? Why does it look like a banana? Why is it so big? Why is it not uniformly red? Yes, it's not uniformly red because it's not been gassed out. Oh, but this is not what we are expecting. What do I do with it? I'm not going to go and put up a cooking class in a modern retail store, right? It's the deep lack of awareness at a buyer level, at a customer level, and at an application level. The three problems. The buyer at a modern retail is typically an agri or a horti graduate, maybe a master's degree, has very limited exposure. He has seen a few vegetables, as Dr. Rao said in the bottom of his infographic, right? Those 4 varieties of corn, those 6 varieties of cherry tomatoes. If I tell anybody cherry tomatoes do come in white color and black color and orange color, I said, this guy's gone marbles in his brain, right? But where is the limitation is knowledge. Adoption of knowledge and bringing it on a retail shelf. Very few retailers in this country do take that, but not much. The second big limitation is application. And as I said again twice before in this chat, I'm going to bring with takeaways in what we did in the next part of the journey, is what is the application? How am I going to use it? This lockdown has taught several of my friends that they need a recipe book on how to make ice cubes. There's a little bit of sarcasm in the tone, yes, but there are people out there who don't know how to cook. What do you make for them? How do you do? They don't want to order in for health and safety and hygiene reasons. Maybe they had very busy lives. But this lockdown has taught even those people how to cook with limited ingredients. I want to see how I can make things easier. For me, in the lockdown, we didn't get anything. We were lucky, Zari. We had a massive farm. You want to eat a salad? Okay, let's make some salad. Okay, you want to have tonic water? Okay, no gin, but that's okay. We're still happy having some tonic water. But it has taught a lot of lessons, right? Also, what is influencing the culture has been answered to a large extent between a chef and a farmer. How do we take it to the next level, Zareen? How do you democratize this knowledge? Is it a cookbook? Is it an online video? Is it making simple ingredients? What do we do, Zareen? What are your views? How do we democratize this knowledge? How do you bring it out to people? It becomes application easy. What your views? How do we teach people how to make a good saliboti?
No, I see a lot of it is one is interest. I think you've really got to be interested in wanting to increase your knowledge, to learn, to see, to try. See, I'm talking as a restaurateur. Persistence. So if you, I don't know how, if you're asking me how will you create that interest, it's, you've got a huge, I mean, it's very, very difficult, because are you going to grow the vegetables? You're going to create interest in the market. It is very difficult.
It's very difficult.
Yeah. So I don't know what your solution would be, but if the restaurateur or the chef is not willing to try, because without attempting or using his, see, chefs do come with some kind of inborn talent, right? It's not like, it's not all bookwork. I saw it in Xerxes. There was something in him. It wasn't just because he went to WFBlr did he learn everything. It is there within him to create, to try and say, look, maybe we can do this with this. I would see them doing it in the kitchen. I mean, with every produce that came in between Abhishek, Liz, and Xerx, they would be working to create a dish. It didn't always work. They would say, yeah, fine, this isn't working, or this isn't in keeping with maybe Red Fox philosophy of food. But there was always an attempt. So what we need then are interested parties to say, let's try. You can only push that much, Nameet, and say, look, try. I don't know. Maybe you could work with chefs to have demos and show others how these can be used in different ways.
So we took a leaf from that, and I would like to share also one wonderful experiment that really paid off for a particular chef. If you remember, Zareen, we had a wonderful chef in Bangalore called Chef Jolly from JW Marriott Bangalore.
Yes.
Right? Chef Jolly did something very interesting, and it's still remembered on the farms. He picked up young talent from his restaurant, all his restaurants, and said, let's immerse ourselves just for one day.
Okay.
With the soil, with the crop. And all of morning, we're going to do nothing but harvest and forage. There's going to be no script, there are going to be no recipes. And we're going to cook a big lunch. And he invited bloggers. He invited friends, he invited family. That took off a large level with his own customers in his property, that they were more experimentative ingredients. There were more ingredients beyond the obvious. And that opened a whole bouquet of offering for restaurants. So in many ways, back to the theme of this talk is the culture did change. And that's why I have a deep sense of love and respect for Bangalore, its people, its restaurants. They're still open to change. They're still open to experimenting. They're still open to trying.
Right.
It's still okay to take a long shot in a dark. So what, it doesn't work.
I agree, because that's the only way. I remember those wonderful colored carrots. I will never forget that plate that Xerxes had set up. There was purple, and there was a bluish, and then there was your red, and there was the regular orange, and there were all these little tiny carrots. And honestly, we didn't know where the customers would be. They'd look at the plate and say, what is this? But I think by then, because we had already set a trend at Red Fork, first with that blackboard menu that no restaurant had, and that took us, Sneha and me, a good 3 months to convince our customers that a blackboard menu is no different from a printed menu. The food still tastes the same. It's only written on a blackboard. It's a huge, just that change took us 3 months of convincing the customer that you don't need a printed menu, and what the joy of having that blackboard menu was. So I think, see, one is change. It takes a long time, but we had already set the trend that we'll be different. So it was easy to take your ingredients and give it to the customer and see the joy in them trying it out. So as you say, it is also the restaurant's responsibility to educate the customer. Xerxes always said to us, to Sneha and me, because we were the ones dealing with the customers, he says, educate the customer, talk to them about the food, tell them this dish, how it is created. They want only a chicken sandwich. He said, we're not a sandwich place. Tell them I can give them a perfectly good roast chicken with Nameet's vegetables, a salad, whatever. Educate the customer. So I think it's also the restaurant's responsibility, and that's the only way knowledge can be passed on, right?
Yeah, that's true, right? Because I'm seeing the questions on the side, and I would definitely have Shivani pick them on thread. Somebody asked about how do you bring in democratization of food, right? And I made this comment. And Zareen, I think you answered a lot. The responsibility is also at the restaurant end, the front facing, right? The consumer end, the retailer. Also as a farmer, yes. I still remember we used to put out a series therein, and quite some people did get irritated. Did you know? Remember, an email used to come once
Yes.
a week. Did you know that there is a black tomato?
Yeah.
Right? Out of and Shivani and everybody, we used to send out 7,500 emails every week. You know how many people would respond? 3.
Yeah, probably.
Zareen, Chef Anupam, Chef Jolly. We would get marked spam. I'm sharing this as it is, right? And then one day between Naveen and me, we took a decision that we no longer going to go into this journey of try to give gyan for free, right? No need, cut it down. And then people would call back and say, email me, I said, damn if I did, damn if I don't. What do I do? Then we said, okay, you write to us what you want, and we will give it to you. And we built a new mailing list, which was more voluntarily given to us after a lot of clarification. Also, application was very important, Zareen, right? See, you had Xerxes as a talent powerhouse in Red Fork and Daddy's Delhi. I really looked at homes in this time. It gave me a lot of time from March to almost now end of August, right? People come back and say, I want something to put on my seasoning that is like a pizza's, a popular chain's, seasoning on top. I said, just take some oregano, some basil, and some garlic bits and some salt, and you're done. And I was very surprised that people didn't find it. Right? Again, going back to the same theme and stitching it, you were doing fresh. I want to do something much more. We had 2 problems. I cannot slap a tomato and say, Zareen has only ordered 2 kilos of San Marzano, so don't give me more than 2 kilos. The plant will do its job. She will produce. Yeah. What do I do of those 44 tons of San Marzano that nobody wanted to buy? Retailers didn't want it because they wanted, in Kannada, we call it Drushti Bombay. Oh, dikhane ke liye 4 type ke color tomato, right? Just to show that I have these many varieties. We were getting tired, Zareen. Right? What do we do, right? And we as a team decided that, you know what, let's sun dry them.
Yes, I remember those.
Remember those, right? And then we took all the San Marzanos and just simply sun dried. 3 days, 4 days, turned them around. Little bit of salt. I remember it was 1.3% of salt on them just to keep them nice and crisp and juicy at the same time. We sold it out in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We didn't have any more. I still remember Sneha calling me and saying, do you think this will soak well in oil? I only have 1 kilo. I said, I have no more. 40 tons of San Marzano was dried over 5 days. I remember a battery of 60 support staff on the farm doing this and drying it on massive wood planks. We wanted to go a step further. And that was the birth of the baby of First Agro called Sakura Fresh. Sakura Fresh did start at testing its ground with direct deliveries to consumers. We quickly burnt our fingers. If we gave a big tomato, people wanted a small tomato. If we gave a small tomato, they said, give me a big tomato. If we gave both the sizes, you guys don't know how to sort your tomatoes. Okay. We gave them purple.
The world of the restaurant.
Yeah, right.
Never
then,
right.
Pardon me, Zareen?
It's never right.
It's never right? And then I remember this very funny beans, the purple beans. Do you remember? I said, never blanch them.
Yes.
The purple beans, right? I had this big property send me a legal notice that I am cheating customers and I'm actually selling them colored green beans with purple color on them because after blanching, they became green. And I said, God have mercy on me. These have anthocyanins. They break down with heat. You do a flash cooking with them. It is on the instructions on the packet of purple beans. It is on the website. It's been sent on your email. It's been WhatsApp to you before you have even touched the packet. Oh, is it so? I said, were you dreaming when you sent me a legal notice? These are true stories to all those who are listening, that knowledge is limited. People want quick fixes, and that gave birth to a lot of input at Sakura Fresh, that I'm going to make this simple. So Zari, since we last met, we went and innovated in the culinary world. We picked up the best talents. We picked up the best input from the best talent we could get. Xerxes, every chef we knew, right? How do we make it simple? And this lockdown taught us a lot of time, right? Now we have the entire range of seasonings, sprinklers, marinades, rubs, sauces, dips, cocktail mixes, which don't have alcohol, of course, tonic waters, bitters, zero alcohol bitters, and maybe in about 2 months, zero alcohol spirits.
My God.
Where does input come from? It came from the farm. It came from the soil. Is a chef ready to adopt it? Oh, yes. Chefs are already using it. Cost pressure, simplicity. More questions, Shivani? I see your finger going up. Any questions right now? I'll stop for a minute.
No,
Yes.
not Shivani.
Yeah. There's a lot of questions coming in, so I want to make sure we can get to as many of those as possible. But definitely super interesting to hear about how it has to be a collaborative effort and how both the grower and the chef has an equal responsibility in pushing this change in culture forward. So one of the I'm gonna dive into some of the questions. The first one comes from Rini. She asks, as a supply chain aggregator, do you think one of the most important factors is price over quality when it comes to buying ingredients? How can we overcome that?
Really, as a supply chain aggregator, one of the main issues I would foresee you facing is the concept of price. If a takkali is available for 8 rupees, why would you pay 80 rupees for a San Marzano? Unless a restaurant really needs it. So this is a massive challenge. Why would you go looking for rocket at 850 rupees a kilo? So yes, it is going to be a challenge. Price over quality, over cultivar, over availability. Can't reduce the price because the seeds are expensive, and without pesticide stuff to grow. So it is going to be a constant cat and mouse game. Too many questions.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Nameet. So the next question I'm going to take is from Kumud. She asks, has there been some understanding of how much do initiatives like yours contribute to feeding the city? And could you expand to other feeders?
In absolute percentage or numerical values, no, I do not have any data on that, and it would be unfair for me to throw in a number. I think so 5 tons twice a week is a very large contribution of actually zero pesticide vegetables hitting Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, and Chennai, and Agra, and Udaipur, and Jaipur, and Maldives, Seychelles, Mauritius, Colombo. That's a 10 ton a week. That's 40 tons a month. That's a huge number. And consistently, and for 10 years.
So that's quite something. The next question comes from Saina. She actually has 2 questions. She asks, during these times of COVID, it seems that many home chefs are open to different produce and want to know what goes behind the produce. So isn't that a plus point?
Absolutely, Saina. It is a big plus point because now is the entire opening up of discovery, as I say, right? It's a journey of discovery. It's the path that many in the busy days in pre-COVID times or before COVID we couldn't indulge in. Now you can. And I think so that's a big boost for farmers like me, right? Suddenly people are waking up and say, oh, there's something called a flat leaf parsley. Yes. So it is a big plus for us. Suddenly discovery, we can have lots of time in hand.
Yes, I'm not sure if I seem to have missed her second question. But Elizabeth asks, how do you see Bangalore's culinary culture evolving post-pandemic? And
Okay,
it would be great to hear
let me use
from both of you on this.
some judgment, some, can you hear me? Okay, so some judgment is it's going to spring back. It's not going to be quick. Massive cost cutting, no luxury spurging. I think so. Restaurants will like to stay alive first and then bring it back to more expensive. That is the one direction I see it going. I also see possibly a direction where restaurants will re-innovate themselves. So innovation will happen, cost cutting will happen for sure. And smaller, much smaller restaurant. You will no longer see 200-seater restaurants. You'll probably see 20-seater restaurants doing niche, good, cool stuff. You'll not see 200-seaters anymore.
Zareen, do you have thoughts on this?
Very honestly, we sold our restaurant. It's been almost 2 years now, so it really wouldn't be fair for me to comment because I'm not up to date with the industry. But where I would like to agree with Nameet is the size of the restaurants. And frankly, it is not something that's related to pandemic. I always believed that the success was not in having 100 or 200-seater restaurant. The success was, I'm not saying those haven't been successful or there are no successful 100-seater restaurants, but I honestly think that the kind of attention that a restaurant requires it is virtually impossible to do that when you have a size like 100 or 200. When the smaller ones have so much, you can give so much more of yourself, because we must remember a restaurateur's life is a hell journey, if I have to put it mildly. There are very few hours of sleep. There is no rest whatsoever. I did it for 17 years. I had no social life, virtually no social life. I think I could count my good friends on my one hand. And even those friends were because they all came into the restaurant to meet me, not because I went to meet them. So when you have a life like that and you're looking at 100 or 200-seater restaurant with the kind of costs and all, it just doesn't seem like the kind of, forget business model, any model, it just doesn't work. So with the pandemic, 100%, you're going to see smaller, I think more niche, probably giving way to new discoveries, new creations. There, yes, I definitely agree with Nameet.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. There's another interesting question that I believe comes from Nina, who is watching on YouTube. How does this new produce being introduced into Bangalore's food chain influence biodiversity and the agri-foodscape?
Let's address biodiversity first. Instead of having one kind of parsley, there are 5 kinds of parsley. Yeah, it confuses the hell out of chefs that which is this and how to use what. But number one is diversity of the produce itself. Instead of one tomato, it is 49 kinds of tomatoes. Instead of one spinach, now we have 6 kinds of spinach. So enough evidences of diversity within the crop, because for me as a farmer, the big help was my damn mushy, right? My pest was very confused. Which parsley do I eat for today? So it protected my crop. Putting it very funny, right? Is in a simple manner is that diversity came with a sheer range within the vegetable. Second, importantly, we always believed at First Agro that you don't manufacture land anymore. This is all we have. And pretty much this is all what is left behind. You got to take care of it. If you don't protect it, it will not last you, not even for my lifetime. So it was my responsibility to keep it clean, make sure my birds and my bees and my butterflies and little snails and snakes and everything that lived on the farm lived as it is. It's their home as well. Yeah, we have dogs on the farm. They're all that. And Zareen, if you remember, 33 of them, right? None of them were chained ever. They all run all over the place. Second was biodiversity is not merely number of crops you grow, the kind of techniques you use to grow, how do you take care of your soil, your water, your environment, your people, and the produce ultimately. It's also about the overall responsibility you have towards the food chain. We at First Agro were the first guys to bring in the entire zero pesticide system, and Dr. Prabhakar did talk about maximum residual limits. We were not even, we were zero. And that's why we are still very proud to use the word zero pesticide, and not because I said so or because Zareen believed so. We took it to a neutral third party residue analysis lab. Over 10 years, you can imagine every 45 to 90 days, this crops would go. Imagine 96 sets of crops in 96 boxes over every 90 days would go to labs to get it checked to second, third decimal place. We built that trust for ourselves. Because tomorrow, if a mom is going to feed its child a little baby carrot, I want the mother to feel very, very confident. That's clean. That's the ultimate reality for me. That's all, Shivani. That's simple. Biodiversity and food safety. It fits into Bangalore very well. I love the city. It's very experimentative, very open to innovation.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So I just have one last closing question, Nameet. A couple of people have asked, Nina as well as Deepika, where can people get First Agro produce? Is it available to consumers,
It's
individuals?
available to consumers. I think so. Just this Friday, we shipped it to Loyal World at Whitefield, a very large consignment of greens. It's available at Whitefield. Loyal World has it. We moved away from a lot of retailers because retailers are now focusing on more essential commodities rather than lettuces and greens and fancy stuff. I think so. Let them fix that. And over the next 60 days, we should be back to most of the modern retailers. But right now, it's at Loyal World because they said that, we get the regular stuff. We also want your stuff for home users.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So I hope everyone really enjoyed that session because it was super insightful and, into the evolution of the food culture of Bangalore with produce and with restaurants. And with that, I'd like to thank you both, Nameet and Zareen, for joining us and sharing all of this with us over the last 45 minutes. Thank you all who tuned in and shared your questions. We tried to address as many as possible within this hour. But we are now prepping for the next session. So up next, we have food scientist Spurti Ravi speaking about City of Plant-Based Identities, which is going to be at 12. So please do join us for that. And we would definitely recommend that you go to the Science Gallery website and check out all of the other plant-related exhibits and activities that they have planned. So thanks you all for tuning in and see you at 12.